Hello and welcome back to the MLB DFS presented by LineStar. We are here. I am back in studio for today. We're going to be breaking it down. We are going to start off by going through yesterday's winning lineup as well as the perfect lineups for DraftKings. And unfortunately, FanDuel isn't allowing me to access yesterday's winning lineup, but we will still go through that perfect lineup. We will then go through the pitchers to consider today and stacks. Now, before we get into it, come join us at LineStar. $39.99 per month gets you access to everything we do, all the props, all the DFS. You get it all for one low price. Now, let's get into today's slate. We will get over to that FanDuel perfect lineup first. And go back to yesterday. All right, so good old Shata got over on my Padres. He put up 43, ended up in the perfect lineup. And then we have a two-man Seattle stack, a two-man Cardinal stack, and some one-offs on FanDuel. Unfortunately, I can't show you the winning lineup on FanDuel today, but we can do that on DraftKings, so we will do just that right now. All right, so the winning lineup or the perfect lineup on DraftKings: Luis Gil, Yoshida Yamamoto, then two-man Dodger stack, two-man Seattle, two-man Cardinals. Then we had a Verdugo and Alonso got it done. So nice little perfect lineup. Used a lot of the salary. Solid scoring one. And the winning lineup on DraftKings went to Eric X, who had Bailey Ober, Lou Gill, and a good old St. Louis stack. Looks like a three-man St. Louis, 1, 2, 3, 4-man Dodgers, and then had a KC one-off. So congrats to them. Way to make it happen. You are the winner of $50K. So congrats to you. Now let's move on to today's slate and see what we have in store for us here. Getting on to today's period. And it is a fairly interesting slate. So highest owned is George Kirby and Aaron Savali, with Chris Sale and Chris Paddock right after that. Sale is pretty much the same ownership as Kirby and Savali. I do think that it's very clear, though, Chris Sale is the best option on this slate. I think his ownership should be much higher than both the other guys, but we will start going off with George Kirby versus the Twins. Big thing here is Kirby is a great pitcher. However, got to bring up the fact that he is so much worse on the road. 47.7% less fantasy points away. However, he's a very good pitcher. Minnesota striking out 23%, but 330 WOBA, 185 ISO, so they are hitting the ball fairly hard. And then you get into Kirby's stats, alone, 2.79 FIP over his last 20, 3.39 ERA, so he's probably due for a little regression there to the upside. And over the last 5 starts, 2.12 FIP, 2.57 ERA, 28% K rate. That is one thing that I did expect from him this year. I expected that K rate to go up a little bit, and so far to start the year, it is. So I would like to see that trend to continue. The worrying thing about Kirby, 42% fly balls, 30% hard contact. So he is allowing a decent amount of hard contact, decent amount of fly balls. That's not great versus a team that has a 185 ISO versus righties, or versus pitcher that's not as good away. So I do have some reservations with Kirby. However, he is absolutely one of the better pitchers on this slate. So I'm not totally fading him, but I'm also not trying to get 30% or above on him as a pitcher. I am very intrigued with him, though, as he is one of the better arms on this slate. One other thing is BVP data doesn't look great for Minnesota for him. 30 attempts, plate attempts, hitting 276 ISO as well. But at least there's a 43% K rate. So there is some upside in the matchup. Intrigued with Kirby, definitely not going all in on him. Next, we got Aaron Savali. Now, this is an interesting one. So he's going against the White Sox. He's actually got rocked a little bit versus the White Sox. In 81 plate attempts, they're hitting 333 off him. Now, I still do like Savali, but I got to put that out there, and I want to put it out in the beginning so it, hits a little harder. You guys realize that. But the White Sox as a whole, the lineup isn't great. They're 131 ISO, 290 WOBA. Both are very low. The other thing is I think Savali is due for some positive regression. 3.69 FIP versus a 4.88 ERA over his last 20 starts. And then in the short term, 4.68 FIP. So he hasn't been pitching quite as well as his, last 20 start form, but his ERA is almost double, up to 8.39. I do expect the ERA to come down. He has a 25.3% K rate over his last 20, so there is a little bit of upside there. His StatCast data, however, has been a little scary. 7 barrel ball, bottom 15%, bottom 20% in average distance allowed, allowing 44% fly balls. None of that stuff is great. 30% hard contact is a decent hard contact number. 20% soft contact is pretty low. So I could see you going either way with Savali. I can see you stacking the White Sox. I could see you playing Savali or just fading him and not playing the White Sox. Either is a possibility. But all in all, I do think there is a little bit of upside on him. I think his price is a little bit high, but I'm definitely intrigued. There's not a ton of pitching on this slate, and there is some hitting weather. So we'll keep diving into that. Next, we got Chris Sale. So I think Sale is my favorite pitcher on this slate. LineStar agrees, 2.3x, 22% point projection. Definitely higher than anybody else by quite a bit. He's at home. Boston striking out 25%. 323 WOBA is pretty solid for Boston, but only a 133 ISO versus lefties. So there are definitely things to like about Chris Sale and the matchup. If we take that further down, he's just been unbelievable. 2.77 FIP over his last 5 starts, 3.45 ERA. Both very solid numbers here, 28% K rate. So he has been good. He's been striking guys out. He's been efficient. There's upside in the matchup. Now downside. It's mid-80 degree in Atlanta. The ball should fly a little further. At least Sale has been very good about not letting guys on base. So I am interested in him. Even if he allows, a home run or two, I think that the K's will be there to give him that upside. The strikeout line is 7.5 on him in sportsbooks, and I do like that over, as well as Prop AI likes it. Our consensus projection likes it. I think the most likely scenario is him for 7+ strikeouts against a decent Boston team, and we're on a slate where 7+ is going to be hard to get to from a lot of guys. So let's keep it going now. Chris Paddock is next. If you watch the prop show, I am fading Paddock a little bit today. I think he is due for some regression. 4.82 FIP versus a 3.9 FIP over his last 5 starts. 4.15 ERA over 3.15 FIP over his last 20 starts. Not a ton of K upside. Seattle offense seems to be waking up. They do strike out a lot, 27% strikeouts, but low WOBA and a high ISO. They do hit the ball hard. They do have some power. So definitely a bit intrigued to go with some Seattle bats versus Paddock. And Paddock's allowing 30% hard contact. The one good thing that he's doing is he's keeping the ball on the ground. 42% ground balls and only 29% fly balls, but ton of line drives and ton of barrel balls. So people are seeing him well, and I think it's only a matter of time for some more home runs to come up against him. And 23.6% combined K rate is pretty solid. So there is some upside with him. He has had a couple very good games. He's at home. I understand if you want to go there, but I do side with Seattle a little bit more in this matchup. However, 6.5K is very cheap. For that reason and his upside, you need to at least have him in your player pool, but I'm not huge on him. Next, we got Jordan Hicks, 6.8K. The guy started the year on absolute fire, had a good start versus Pittsburgh, but then a down start versus Philly. He is now in Colorado, which obviously isn't great, but it is cooler temps in Colorado, so that will help, pitchers a little bit. Will negate some of that altitude. Obviously, not all of him, but the big thing here, Colorado striking out 30.8% versus right-handed pitchers. Low WOBA, low ISO. I think Hicks at 6.8K is pretty interesting. I think he can get up to, 5Ks or so. He's probably going to allow a run or two because it's Colorado, but all in all, I actually think he looks decent and not a ton of people are going there. He's cheap. FIP 3.96 is fine, not great. 2.42 ERA, so maybe some regression is coming. Colorado is a great place for that regression to come out. But all in all, with not many people going there and a little bit of upside due to Colorado striking out so much, I think it is a little bit of an interesting spot to go and try and pick on Colorado again, even though it's in Colorado. Now, it is in Colorado, so it's always risky. Our LineStar projection's not high on him, but consensus is at least almost 2x here. So I'm a bit intrigued. I don't absolutely love it, but I'm going to have a little bit. Next, we got Carlos Rodon, who I think is fine. He's been pitching fairly good. However, he is definitely due for a little bit of negative regression. 4.45 FIP, 3.38 ERA. Isn't great, allowing a ton of fly balls. It's very warm in New York. It's 80 degrees. Winds are also blowing out. That fly ball number just does not bode well for that. I think it's probably likely he gives up a home run or two today. So I'm not loving Rodon. I understand if you want to go there due to the fact that he's averaging 23% more fantasy points at home. He's cheap for what his upside is, but I don't think this is a great matchup for him, and that is my issue with him. Next, we got Kyle Bradish. This is another game that's pretty warm. Winds are slightly flying out to right field. I'm intrigued with Bradish for sure. I do have to say that I'm a little worried about his pitch limit. He was stopped at 84 last game out, but there's definitely some upside in this matchup. Washington 129 ISO, 305 WOBA. They're hitting 220 off him in 32 plate attempts. Another thing is he has a 32% K rate over his last 5 starts. Now, he's only had 1 this year, but he struck out 5 in 4.2 innings. So absolutely intrigued with the upside going to some Bradish here. Do worry about, the fact he only went 84 pitches, but from what we've seen last year, he can work deep into games. He has some strikeout upside, and I'm a bit intrigued with this matchup at 25.8% combined K rate, 8.4K. We have him at 2X. I think it's an interesting spot to get different. Another spot that's going to be a little interesting to get different, 6.3K, Spencer Arrighetti. Now, I think he's been pitching much better than what we see. 8.27 ERA versus a 3.44 FIP. That goes with the 26% K rate. So if he's able to get to that K rate a little bit more, bring his ERA down closer to that 3.44 FIP, I think he becomes fairly interesting. Now, just like Rodon, it is a little scary, 44% or 45% fly balls. But the good thing here, not a ton of hard contact, only 24.5% hard contact. So as a crazy flyer punt, Arrighetti is a little intriguing to me. He's only 6.3K, but he's going against the Yankees, who have been hitting the ball pretty well lately. Aaron Judge is turning it on. Juan Soto is still hitting well. A lot of different guys in that lineup can get it done. So it is a very, very scary matchup. But I think there is some upside at Arrighetti's price for him. So I'm at least intrigued on a site like DraftKings where you need two guys, and going down to Arrighetti will give you the ability to get up a little bit. Not loving Jordan Montgomery. Get it if you want to go there. There is some upside against Kansas City, however, or Cincinnati. Versus lefties, they strike out at 22.6% and hit the ball pretty well. They're much better versus lefties than they are versus righties. So I don't love the spot for him. Nick Pivetta is a little bit interesting. Atlanta's bats do seem to be waking up a little bit, though. But the big thing here, which my worry is I think he's going to be a little bit of limited, 80, 85 pitches, something like that. But he does have some upside. That K rate, 32% over the last 5, 35% over the last 20. So for that reason, I'm a little bit intrigued, but the fact that he's likely on like a pitch count, I don't love it. And then nobody below him do I really like. So let's get over to FanDuel, go to the pitchers here, and walk through us on this note. So on FanDuel, Chris Sale is the highest owned pitcher. I am not surprised by that. He is by far and away my favorite one. George Kirby is next. Definitely a little intrigued with Kirby. His ownership isn't too bad, 23%. And then Chris Paddock, only 7.8K. So you're getting a big discount here, but I do worry about him being able to go into 6 innings to get quality start. I do think he's due for some regression, but he's a decent salary saver if you want to go there. And Aaron Savale, I think, is in a really good spot, even though Seattle has hit him decently in the past. So intrigued with that. Intrigued with Kyle Bradish right under him. Jordan Hicks is 8.3K on FanDuel. Don't like that one as much. Think he's a little bit expensive. And then if you want to get nuts, Spencer Arrighetti, 7.3K. If he can shut down, which is going to likely be a chalky Yankees offense, I do think that one's a bit interesting. Now, let's get over to the stacks, and we can go through that. So, highest owned stacks for today is Baltimore. Baltimore is against Mitchell Parker. Thing here is we got wind blowing out to right. We got warm weather. The ball should fly a little bit. Mitchell Parker has done a very good job about keeping the ball down, though. A lot of ground balls, not a ton of fly balls. However, if he lets a couple balls get elevated and Baltimore is able to tee him up, they absolutely can do that. They hit a ton of home runs, never like warm weather and winds going out. If you're a pitcher versus a team that can definitely hit homers, and Baltimore can do that. So definitely a bit intrigued by Mitchell Parker. As I said, he's been decent, 1.96 FIP over his last 5 starts and 2.53 ERA. However, I think he is due for some regression there. I don't think he's quite that pitcher, even though he's been good. Next, we got Arizona in Great American Small Park, which is obviously interesting, with Ashcraft, who has a 4.83 FIP over his last 20 starts versus 3.65 over his last 5. I don't hate going to Arizona, but I also don't love it. They just haven't been that great lately. However, at least Corbin Carroll does seem like he is starting to hit the ball a little better recently. So it is at least intriguing. I think Arizona very much needs Carroll to be hitting the ball like he did last year for them to be competitive. Houston's popping up versus Carlos Rodon. I mentioned in the Rodon breakdown that I'm intrigued with Houston, and I think they are in a very interesting spot, as well as Atlanta with warm weather. Pivetta is good, but likely a little limited today, and we've seen in the past you can definitely get to Pivetta, and he turns to Nick Poverty. Tampa Bay is looking good versus Chris Flexen. I love this spot for them. They have a ton of guys that are cheap and hitting the ball well, so definitely intrigued to go there. Our highest projected stacks, we got Houston, Arizona, Yankees, all of which look very good. I like the Yankees spot. I do think they may go a little over-owned, though, even though we're only showing 35% right now. Arrieta, if you just look at his stats, he looks like he's been pitching terrible. But that 3.44 FIP number, his Sierra, all that point to him actually pitching much better than he has been. Cincinnati versus Montgomery. Montgomery's been off to a rough start. 5.23 FIP over his last 5 starts. If he continues to pitch like that in Great American Small Park, Cincinnati can definitely get to him. Boston versus Sale, that is going to be a leverage stack there. I don't think many people will try to stack versus Sale with how good he has been. But we got very warm weather. That just makes the ball fly, makes it a little easier to score runs. We got a 9.5 total, so there's definitely going to be some runs in that game. And then, obviously, you have the Giants in a great spot in Colorado versus Peter Lambert. And you got to talk about that. Lambert's probably one of the worst pitchers on this slate. Likely doesn't work super deep into the game, and Giants can definitely score some runs. My only issue with the Giants is they tend to platoon guys a little bit and will sub guys out, and so stacking them becomes a little bit harder. But definitely intrigued. Minnesota's popping up a little bit versus George Kirby. Do got to bring up the fact that he's so much worse on the road. So it is a bit interesting there. Now, let's get over to the value stacks. White Sox are popping up. As I mentioned, the BVP data for Savali isn't great versus the White Sox. They might be able to get to him. Going with a cheap White Sox stack isn't, the end of the world. I just realized I've been doing 4 and not 5 stacks for this, but shouldn't change much of the data anyways. Cincinnati's popping up. Absolutely intrigued by them, as well as Seattle. Now, this one I think is very interesting. Not many people are going to go there. Paddock, I think, is due for some regression. He's allowing a lot of fly balls, a lot of barreled balls, or a lot of line drives, a lot of barreled balls. And Seattle seems to be waking up as an offense. They also have some speed, have some power. Definitely intrigued to go to them, especially with mini stacks. And then I don't love picking on Bradish, but good hitting weather in Washington makes them a bit interesting. And ceiling-wise, Baltimore, Washington, Boston, Houston, all pretty interesting to me, as well as New York popping up. Highest FIP, we got Chris Flexen and Tampa Bay. Definitely intrigued by that stack. Our highest implied totals, we got Giants at 5.2, Yankees at 5.1, Tampa Bay at 4.9, Arizona, Atlanta, Cincinnati, all at 4.8. All of them are interesting. Really do pretty much like all of those stacks. I think Nick Pivetta going against him is probably the best pitcher of those two stack, but willing to go to any of them. In Arizona, bullpen hasn't been great. Colorado, Jordan Hicks has been very good, but it is Colorado. The bullpen has been great, so you can definitely see them doing some damage, as well as Houston versus Carlos Rodon and Baltimore versus Mitchell Parker. A lot of different ways, I think, to go with stacks today. Pitchers, a little bit slim, but there's definitely enough options out there to get different and figure out what you want to do. All in all, guys, thank you for joining us. It's good to be back in the studio. Good luck tonight, and see you guys later. Bye.